the Nazi Games indeed. Hallo allemaal. Daar zijn we dan weer, RHTV Live. En we streamen natuurlijk live vanuit het mooie Maastricht. En natuurlijk gaan we aanwijzen op de kaart waar het precies ligt. Ja, hier in het zuiden des lands. So we are streaming live from Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands. And of course, we're going to talk geopolitics and politics, of course. Ja, we gaan geopolitiek en politiek aanhalen. Het eerste wat we gaan belichten, ik ben ook al eerder in de middag live geweest. Het eerste wat we gaan belichten is dus een moeder met kind die geen woning meer heeft. Ja. Dus we gaan even daarnaar kijken. So the first thing we're going to show you guys is a mother who has no living space anymore. Yeah. She has to move out. And she has a kid, a child, like 2 or 3 years old, I don't know. And she has to move out.
Ik ben niet verslaafd. Ik heb geen psychische problemen.
So she's not addicted to anything, no psychic problems.
Ik heb alleen een huis nodig. Als ik mijn
She only needs living space.
leven niet zo op orde had gehad, dan hadden ze me geholpen.
Vandaag moet Angelique definitief haar huis uit.
Hoi.
Hi, hoe gaat het?
Ja, kut.
Ja, dat snap ik.
Ja.
Je moet dus zo de sleutel gaan inleveren.
Ja, het is echt belachelijk. De gemeente geeft me geen urgentie, want ik wist dat ik eruit moest. Ik heb er zelf voor getekend. Corporaties.
So she has no urgency because she was living in an apartment that she needed to move out of after a year or so. You know, so she knew she had to leave. But now she has no living space anymore.
Dus die willen me niet helpen, want ik heb geen urgentie, dus ze mogen me niet laten voordringen. Ik krijg gewoon geen plek. Er zijn gewoon te weinig woningen. Als je ergens achteraan staat, dan heb je gewoon pech.
Ja.
So she's back in the line, right, and waiting for a living space. You know, and over here, the government once said, we give you bath, bed, and brood, bread. So that is basically what the government is supposed to give, right? But now all the refugees get the 3 B's, and all the Dutch people just, you know, you go live with your family, right? Dit gebeurt, mensen, dit gebeurt. Ze moet waarschijnlijk bij familie gaan wonen. En zoiets, heel erg triest. Maar ja, dit gebeurt. And we're also going to take a look at Pieter Omtzigt from the NSC New Social Contract. And he says the euro has failed. We export lots of gas to other countries, and it's a closed contract, so no one is allowed to know who we export to, whilst we cut off the gas for the Dutch people.
Dank u wel, voorzitter. Voorzitter, het monetair beleid in de Europese Unie wordt gekenmerkt door elk 2 jaar een nieuw instrument. Elke 2 jaar komt er een nieuw instrument en een oud instrument wordt nooit afgebouwd, hoewel de intentie daar altijd is. Dat betekent dat we bij de crisis 10 jaar geleden een balanstotaal van 3000 miljard hadden En nu aangekomen zijn bij een balanstotaal dat 3 keer zo groot is, 9000 miljard. Bijna 90% van alles wat we totaal verdienen binnen de Europese Unie. Als je iemand gezegd had bij de oprichting van de Unie dat de Europese Centrale Bank een balans zou hebben die bijna gelijk zou zijn aan de totale verdiencapaciteit van die eurozone, zou het unanieme advies van de Raad van State, van alle wetenschappers en van iedereen geweest zijn: doe niet mee. Er is geen bedoeling geweest om monetair te gaan financieren. En nu hebben we weer een nieuw instrument.
So he's talking about all these instruments that the EU has, right? And, they all don't work. Ja, al die instrumenten die werken niet. En ja, dus we hebben er wel mee te maken.
Transmission Protection Instrument. En de collega van de SP heeft al aangegeven wat dat betekent. We gaan meer Italiaanse schulden kopen en we bouwen de Duitse en Nederlandse schulden op de balans af. Dat is pure monetaire financiering voor een econoom. Ik ben geen jurist, maar ik ben ervan overtuigd dat die het weg kunnen redeneren. Maar daar gaat het niet om. We creëren een onbalans van epische proporties. En alle problemen die we hadden moeten oplossen? Nou, in 2010, 2011 hadden we het voornemen om de doomloop op te lossen. En wat staat er in het rapport van de Europese Unie? De doomloop is niet opgelost.
So within the EU we had a doom loop, right? Which means one country is in financial problems and another country is in financial problems. You know, it's a loop. So Italy was buying off Greek debt and Italy got in debt whilst Italy lended from Spain to pay off the Greek debt, you know, and this is the loop that we're talking about, and that has not been solved within the EU. This means Greece is still under austerity measures and such, you know. They have a big debt they can never pay off.
Verwevenheid van de schulden van banken en staten. We stapelen dus iedere keer een probleem erbovenop. Ik heb dan ook een paar simpele vragen aan de minister van Financiën. Deelt zij de mening van oud-minister Hogevorst dat het vertrek uit de eurozone geen taboe mag zijn en wil ze daarop reflecteren? En 2, acht zij de muntunie de komende 10 jaar houdbaar? Of zijn er nog voorwaarden nodig om die muntunie houdbaar te maken? Voorzitter, in de EMU kwam nu ook in één keer voorbij dat energiezekerheid een doelstelling is. Op pagina 1 van het stuk dat wij ontvingen. Die energiezekerheid die had meegenomen moeten worden in alle groene plannen. We hadden tijdig moeten bedenken dat als wij nog 30 jaar gas nodig hebben, ook in een energietransitie als je daarmee instemt, dat je voor die 30 jaar je gasvoorraad zeker moet stellen. En uit de Kamervragen van gisteren blijkt dat wij 20 miljard kuub gas winnen en daarvan al 17,5 miljard kuub exporteren in langjarige contracten. Ik herhaal.
17,5 miljard kuub, dat is echt veel gas. En het zou eigenlijk naar de Nederlandse huishoudens toe moeten gaan. Maar onze regering heeft ons afgesloten van het gas. Althans, heel veel gebieden zijn afgesloten. En er is een zogenaamd een warmtenetwerk en dan wel zonnepanelen of windmolens of iets in die trend. Terwijl we dan wel gas leveren aan allerlei andere landen. En dit is dan weer een backdeal, backdoor deal noemen ze dat. Of achterkamertjespolitiek. Ja, de overheid moet toch iets verdienen. Dus ze gaan zijn gas afsluiten bij de Nederlandse bevolking, maar wel doorverkopen aan andere lidstaten in Europa. So the government shut us, or large parts of the Netherlands off gas, and we are exporting lots of gas, 17.5 whatever million cubic liters of gas and stuff like that. You know, it's like, what? Really? But I understand, you know, the government needs revenue. They need money. Ja, geld, daar draait het om. Ja, ze moeten geld hebben. Dus dan gaan ze dus mensen een zonnepaneel aansmeren. Zo, ja, dit is energiezuiniger en bla bla bla bla. Je bent goedkoper uit, bla bla bla bla. De frame van consensus verkopen ze. Ja, het is goed voor het milieu, bla bla bla bla. Maar er staat wel een boom in de weg. Ja, eerst moet die boom weg, die honderden jaren daar heeft gestaan. Want anders krijgt je zonnepaneel geen zon. So the government is selling all kinds of other resources like solar panels, windmills and stuff like that, you know, and it's really insane. Now trees need to go, right? Because otherwise the solar panel will get no sunlight and no energy. And they said it would be cheaper and this and that. And now we found out that it's 2 times more expensive than gas. 2 keer zo duur dan gas. Dat is toch onvoorstelbaar? Criminelen in Den Haag. Criminals in The Hague. And this guy, you know, I thought he was awake, but he's not. He's also living in the frame of consensus. Right? Oh, Russia's bad. Russia's bad. No. We are bad. We attacked Libya, not Russia. We attacked Syria, not Russia. We attacked Afghanistan, not Russia. You know.
Dit land is gedeeltelijk zelfvoorzienend, produceert nog steeds 20 miljard kuub, kleine velden, Noordzee en een klein beetje Groningen. En heeft daarvan 17,5 miljard verpatst. De contracten zijn geheim. Ik wil die contracten op tafel binnen 48 uur. Wie koopt dat gas en tegen welke prijs? Want voorzitter, de belangrijkste taak van de minister van Financiën is de inflatie laag houden. 13% inflatie. En de inflatie hier wordt vooral veroorzaakt door de stijgende energieprijzen. En die energieprijzen die zijn bij ons 30-40% hoger dan in landen als Spanje, Griekenland.
So he's talking about the inflation and the energy prices, right? And we are 40% higher than every other country within the EU. Greece, France, Spain, Germany, they pay a lot less for their energy.
Frankrijk en Duitsland. Terwijl we een interne gasmarkt hebben. Kan iemand mij uitleggen waarom de huishoudens in Nederland 30-40% meer betalen? Dan nog zijn de energieprijzen ontzettend hoog.
Zal ik het je uitleggen, Pieter? Zal ik het je uitleggen? Het zit namelijk zo. Onze overheid zijn criminelen. Jij hebt een mooi exposé gedaan bij de toeslagenaffaire. Dat is dan zogenaamd een fout dat de overheid heeft gemaakt. Wat nog steeds niet goed is, terug is gedraaid. Nog steeds niet. Het is gewoon in een doolpot beland. Ik dacht dat je toch wel inzicht had in de corruptie, de mate van corruptie binnen de Nederlandse overheid. We hebben te maken met een doofpotkabinet. Ja, Balkenende was er net zo goed in, Kok was er net zo goed in. Er zijn zoveel doofpotten in Nederland, dat wil je niet weten. Dus Omtzigt, mocht je meeluisteren, ik raad je bijvoorbeeld aan om te gaan kijken naar de vuurwerkramp in Enschede. Want wat er ons verteld is, dat klopt niet. Dus Ja, het is, we zitten met een doofpotkabinet. Hetzelfde geldt voor MH17. Pieter, misschien kun jij me uitleggen hoe het nou komt dat de Nederlandse overheid heeft gezegd: wij hebben bewijs dat MH17 neer is gehaald door een bukraket. Ja? En dat bewijs, dat mag jij niet inzien. Jij misschien wel als Kamerlid, dat weet ik niet. Maar ik als burger heb het niet kunnen zien. Dus, en ja, volgens mij ben jij een volksvertegenwoordiger, Pieter. En dan zou je dus ook naar mensen moeten luisteren. Ja, en dit is een groot concern, een grote zorg van heel veel mensen in Nederland. Dit is ook de reden waarom heel veel mensen in Nederland hun overheid niet meer vertrouwen. Ja, er is een hele grote kloof tussen politiek en de burger. Je wil niet weten hoeveel burgers er bij het Malieveld hebben gestaan. Voor hun vrijheid. Toen er allerlei totalitaire maatregelen hier waren in Nederland. Maar ja, sommige dingen worden ook heel vaak gecreëerd. Hè? Zoals dat Extinction Rebellion. Wordt allemaal met fluwelen handschoenen aangepakt. En zo. Dus we gaan even kijken naar Extinction Rebellion. Ja, want iemand, een heel beroemd iemand van Extinction Rebellion is opgepakt in Nederland. Ja, en dat laten we zo even in beeld zien. Zo, we hebben het opgezocht en gevonden. Zo. Moeten we even terug naar het begin. Kijk eens aan. Wie hebben we daar? Greta Thunberg, of hoe heet ze? So this is Greta Thunberg, or whatever her name is, Swedish civilian, and coming to the Netherlands and blocking a highway because our government is dealing with fossil fuels. Right? And she's going to get arrested.
You are not love. You are not love. You are not love. You are not love. You are not love.
The police wants you to leave.
Yes?
You're not going?
We are staying here because we know what is at stake and we are not going to give up.
So, Greta, did you swim over from Sweden to the Netherlands, or did you take a plane? I don't think you're taking a boat, right? You know, you take a plane to the Netherlands and sit at a highway, right, blocking the road, which is not allowed when you demonstrate in the Netherlands. And, you know, saying, oh, the climate. But you flew over to the Netherlands. Oh, the climate. According to you, we are supposed to be dead right now. Right? You said like 2 years ago that 2 years ago would be the end of the world. Well, we're still here. We're still here. You are full of it, Miss Thunberg. You live with a frame of consensus, not the frame of reality. Wake up. You're being used. So that's that, right? Greta Thunberg arrested in the Netherlands. Ja, mensen. Dit gebeurt, hè. Dit gebeurt. Ja. Goed. We gaan ook natuurlijk kijken naar geopolitiek. Dat is ook zeer belangrijk dat we dat gaan doen. We laten even wat beelden zien van Hezbollah. Ja, want die zijn druk bezig geweest in de strijd tegen Amerika en Israël.
Update on all the fronts in the Gaza war. Let's begin with Yemen. The Yemeni resistance fired 2 drones and 1 anti-ship ballistic missile at the United States Navy in the Red Sea. They fired at the USS Gravely. That's the name of the ship. That's the destroyer. The Americans claim they shot these drones and anti-ship ballistic missile down. These are, of course, the incidents that we know about. There are many that go unreported by the Americans, and these were leaked to the press. We'll find out more about the other ones once the Houthis make their official statements. And once again, I'll just reiterate that the Yemenis are the only people on the planet who can actually fire at American ships and get away with it. So that speaks volumes to their, as to their capabilities and standing. So these particular ones didn't hit, but the ship involved was the. Forgive me, I had it with me here. Well, not to worry, not to worry. The name of the ship doesn't matter. I had it with me though, but it's okay. So a number of American ships being hit because we haven't had an update for a few days. I would say at least a week. No updates on whether commercial ships were hit. But the Yemenis are still keeping the Americans in check, and there's really nothing they can do about it. How many times have Britain and America bombed the Houthis? Has that changed a single thing about the blockade? Not at all. Remember, the strategy here is to continue bleeding the Israelis. Then we have over here the Iraqi resistance. They struck an Israeli airbase in Haifa. Once again, perhaps I should bring up the map to show you what a remarkable feat this is. Look at, for example, the distance between the Iraqi border. You see here, this is Iraq, and Haifa is all the way over here. So just to be conservative, even from here, we're talking about hundreds of kilometers and very, very pinpoint accurate missiles. So the fact that all of the resistance possess these weapons, I mean, it speaks volumes. And these things go unreported in Western media. Have you noticed that? You never hear about this when, if you turn on Sky News, and my condolences do, or you turn on the BBC. Do they ever talk about the fact that the Iraqis are hitting Ben Gurion, they're hitting Haifa port, they're hitting Eilat? Do you hear about these things? Never. Because it's so embarrassing and the Israelis can't do a thing. Their Iron Dome is trash. It doesn't work. It can be easily overwhelmed if need be. And remember, of course, for example, Hezbollah using their ATGMs. I mean, you can't protect against that in any way. But let's stick to the Iraqi resistance. So they targeted this base, the Ramat David air base in occupied Haifa using drones. Another thing that happened was on the Lebanese front with Hezbollah. They targeted a whole bunch of facilities yesterday and today. So this is yesterday on the 4th of April. They struck one site in the occupied Lebanese hills of Kfar Shibba with artillery shells, resulting in direct hits. They struck a group of Israeli enemy soldiers in Al-Merj with artillery. They struck a building housing Israeli enemy soldiers in a settlement with appropriate weapons, resulting in casualties. This was, of course, in response to Israeli attacks on the southern villages and civilian homes. Remember, the Israelis always hit civilians, whether it's Syria, Lebanon, or Palestine, and the resistance target military assets. That's the difference. So here you can see also in the western sector, they struck a gathering of Israeli soldiers. They also struck the Branit barracks with rockets, and they struck another group of soldiers. If we look at today's feats as well, they've struck another group of assets. And I'll play you a video of the latest one. This is from today. Take a look. Sorry, I muted it just for the copyright. These are enemy forces. Junud al-Adu. To be clear, the resistance never targets civilians. They only hit military assets. This is a house, but it's a house that's been repurposed and appropriated by a group of Israeli soldiers that were under surveillance. And we have the proof right before us. That's the difference, is that we have the video evidence always released by the resistance, whereas the Israelis lie and want you to believe that a civilian target is a military one. This is today, on the 5th of April. And once again, only military targets. And keep in mind that even if they struck settlements, I mean, what is a settlement? A colonial settlement? Is that not an affront? The occupation itself is an affront. But look at the crater. I mean, this is the same roof with infrared on the left, and then the next day, look at the roof over there. The Israelis, they put military barracks.
So we have that going on, right? Retaliation of Hezbollah and other players within the Middle East, you know. So we're going to show it on the map, of course, as Richard also did. Ja, mensen, we laten het even op de kaart zien. Dus vanuit Irak is er dus beschoten op Israël, precisieraketten, en noem het allemaal op. En ja, Libanon is ook weer bezig geweest, deze keer in Haifa, dat gebied daar zo. Normaal schiet ze op de Golanhoogte, want ze proberen dus Syrië te beschermen tegen raketaanvallen. Lukt niet altijd, zoals we dat laatst hebben gezien. Dus Irak valt aan, Libanon valt aan en ook de Houthis vallen ook aan. Die zitten nog steeds in de Rode Zee, schepen te onderscheppen en noem het allemaal op. So we have Hezbollah attacking, we have the Houthis attacking in the Red Sea, we have Iraq attacking Israel, we have Lebanon attacking Israel, and Israel shot an Iranian consulate in Damascus, and you know, Iran will retaliate. This is what they said. When that is the question. Dus de Iraanse consulaat is gebombardeerd en Iran gaat retaliëren. Het is maar de vraag hoe ze dat gaan doen. Maar we weten, lange afstandsraketten, die hebben ze. Ja. Dus als je dit in een bepaalde kleur kan zetten, dan is het van oranje naar rood gegaan. Ja, want wat Israël in de Gazastrook doet, is niet goed. En al die landen die zijn er tegen. Iran, grote demonstraties geweest tegen Irak. Zelfs in Syrië, waar je een bevroren conflict hebt. En andere landen, die waren allemaal tegen de interventie wat Israël dus aan het doen is in de Gazastrook. So all these countries, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, even Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and they're all against the intervention in the Gaza Strip, and they're doing their best to repel Israeli rockets and such like that, you know. So, and sticking with Israel, they are they need to retreat. Yeah. So that is something to look forward to, right? Ze moeten zich terug gaan trekken, Israël. En ja, dat zegt natuurlijk wel iets, hè. Er is zoveel condemnatie naar Israël toe. Zoiets van, ja jongen, dat kun je toch niet doen. En ja, Israël is toch door de druk bezweken. En we gaan even opzoeken of we het kunnen vinden. Al Jazeera. We hebben ook als Shifa ziekenhuis hebben we ook laten zien. En we laten dus ook zien dat de IDF uiteindelijk weggaat. En uit Khan Yunis, dat is dus in het midden van de Gazastrook. Zo. Ze moeten hier zo weg uit Khan Yunis. En dat laten we dus ook zien. Ja mensen, hier krijgen we geopolitiek. So Israel is withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, from Khan Yunis. And we're going to show some images of that.
We begin in Gaza, where the Israeli military has withdrawn most of its troops from the Khan Yunis area in the south. However, it has left one brigade behind. It's unclear what's behind the move, but Israel said a significant force would continue to operate in the rest of the Strip. It comes 6 months after Israel launched its war on Gaza in what the International Court of Justice says is a plausible case of genocide. The assault began after Hamas attacked southern Israel on October the 7th, killing more than 1,100 people. Since then, Israel's bombardment of the Strip has killed more than 33,000 Palestinians, nearly half of them children. Most of the population, around 1.7 million people, has been displaced. Another round of ceasefire negotiations is set to resume in Cairo on Sunday. An Israeli delegation will attend, and Hamas has confirmed it is also sending representatives. Let's bring in Rory Challens. He's in occupied East Jerusalem for us. And Rory, first of all, let's talk about this troop withdrawal. What are we hearing Israel saying about the decision?
Well, basically, there is just one brigade of Israeli troops left in the center of Gaza. The 98th Division, which has been doing so much of the fighting in Khan Yunis for the last 4 months, has been withdrawn. Now, the justification is not official, but it's being talked about in the Israeli media. And essentially what the reasoning behind it is that the Israeli military believes that Khan Yunis operation has been satisfactorily completed. The 98th Division now needs rest and recuperation, and the Israeli military thinks that the best model for its future campaigns and missions in Gaza is more small-scale raids that are intelligence-based, and that positioning of the Nahal brigade right in the middle of Gaza means that it still splits the Strip in two. It stops people who have been displaced from the north to the south going back to their homes, which the Israeli military at the moment doesn't want them doing. So it allows the military to do those raids north and do south, but maintain a very minimal footprint in Gaza. What does this mean for the Rafah operation? Well, of course, it doesn't rule it out, because any big assault on Rafah would need a big call-up of reservists anyway. But it does make it more uncertain, and it does perhaps push it further into the future. Benjamin Netanyahu has been promising that it will still take place, but of course he's under significant international pressure to either cancel that operation or reduce its scope significantly. He's saying it's going to go ahead, but he hasn't pulled the trigger on it yet.
OK, and Rory, what are we hearing about this delegation going to Cairo for another round of negotiations?
Yeah, I think there's perhaps a sense here that there is more momentum behind this particular round of negotiations than there has been for some time, at least.
You know, I kind of wonder, right, if this withdrawal is just to put in the robots, right, the artificial intelligence robots, you know. You think I'm joking? No, I've said, right, the Ukraine-Russia war would be the last war fought by men, you know, and then there will be a transition towards robots. You've heard it on RHTVLive. We talked about this 2 years ago, you know, when the war started. So, you know, I think this withdrawal is just to send in the robots. Yep, send in the robots. So we're going to take a look at our friend Richard Medhurst, who is right on target when it comes to the Middle East. Israel using AI to target Gaza civilians in their homes.
The Israelis are using a killer robot, AI, artificial intelligence, called Lavender. The code name is Lavender. And I want to read to you this exclusive from 972 magazine that contains interviews with Israelis who've used the system to target people in Gaza. The targeting is so broad and abstract and sweeping that you see before you the mountain of corpses in Gaza. It's something out of a movie almost, but unfortunately it's reality for many. Let me read to you from this article. So they start with a book called The Human Machine Team. Okay, and why are they talking about this book? They're talking about it because it was written by the commander of an Israeli unit. And this unit, 8200, it just so happens to be the one that is specialized in matters of cyber warfare. And so this book was written in 2021, and it's a proposal of having an AI system. Well, it turns out it wasn't a proposal because it actually exists, and it's called Lavender. Such a machine, it turns out, actually exists. Okay? Now let me read to you what they've written here. So the human personnel often serve only as a rubber stamp for the machine's decisions. They would personally devote about 20 seconds to each target before authorizing a bombing, just to make sure the lavender marked target is male. Okay, so just to reiterate, the computer, which they have fed ridiculous parameters, which we'll get to in a second, just finds targets. And then the human who is at the computer just says, yeah, okay, whatever. They just devote 20 seconds before they rather take someone's life. And I should say lives, because you'll see now the collateral damage, quote unquote. So this is done despite knowing that the system makes what are regarded as, quote unquote, errors in approximately 10% of cases, and is known to occasionally mark individuals who have merely a loose connection to militant groups or no connection at all. So just to be clear, on average...
Just to be clear, right? We showed you guys the video of the 4 Palestinians walking in the rubble, and you know, these people were bombed Gaza drone video shows killing of Palestinians in Israeli air attack. There you go. We're going to show these images again, and this is shocking. This is really, really shocking. I'm glad they blurred out most of it, but it's very shocking. So here we have 4 Palestinians, 4 Palestijnen die naar huis toe gaan door de puin en zoiets. En dan heb je dus een drone. En ja, wie weet, misschien hebben ze dat al gebruikt, hè, lavender. Maybe they already used lavender, right? You have a drone with the software and recognizes these targets as militants and stuff like that, you know, and then drop some bombs. So who knows, maybe it's already in use. I think so. What is a human life worth? Wat is een mensenleven waard? Huh? Echt triest. Very, very sad to see what's happening over there. But we have more on the table, right? And we're also going to show what happened in Ecuador. Yeah, Ecuador reached the news and reached the radar of RHTVLive because Ecuador had a vice president who was seeking asylum in the Mexican embassy, right, which is basically Mexican ground, and you know, you're not really allowed to go through the embassy and arrest someone, you know. But that happened in Ecuador. Ja, we gaan even naar Ecuador kijken. The former vice president Jorge Glass arrested. Voormalige vicepresident gearresteerd.
Police stormed Mexico's embassy to arrest Ecuador's former vice president. The raid came hours after Mexico announced it would grant Jorge Glass political asylum and urged Ecuador to offer him safe passage to leave the country.
Delincuentes! How can these criminals raid the Mexican embassy in Ecuador? It's not possible. It can't be. It's madness. Yes, they've arrested a former vice president. I'm very worried because he can be killed.
Entiendo que sí. Ecuador's former vice president had been evading arrest and staying in Mexico's embassy since December. He was arguably his country's most wanted felon, Convicted twice for corruption, the 54-year-old was suspended from his duties in 2017 after being charged for allegedly receiving millions of dollars in bribes. More accusations are being investigated.
For many Ecuadorians, it felt like a mockery of justice that he was granted asylum in the embassy. Glass and López Obrador are political allies. There's an ideological connection there, and a lot of Ecuadorians felt that this was a way of mocking us.
Glass has repeatedly said he's a victim of political persecution. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has suspended diplomatic ties with Ecuador.
Mexican diplomatic personnel in Ecuador will leave the country immediately, and Mexico will appeal to the International Court of Justice to hold Ecuador accountable for violations of international law.
Ties between Mexico and Ecuador were under strain well before the arrest. Now they've reached a new low in a case that's ignited an international political crisis. Katia Lopez-Odayan, Al Jazeera.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
So we have that going on. And Mexico cuts diplomatic ties with Ecuador 5 hours ago. So we're going to take a look at this here.
Governments across Latin America are condemning Ecuador's police raid on the Mexican embassy. Mexico has severed diplomatic ties with Ecuador after the raid on Friday night in which special forces detained former Vice President Jorge Glass. He has been arrested on corruption charges and had been in the Mexican embassy since December.
Ecuador's raid of Mexico's embassy has caused outrage. A growing list of countries have issued scathing rebukes. Protesters in Mexico took their fury to the streets.
If this would happen in the Netherlands, people would be like, oh, I don't care. You know, whatever. Yeah. But this is Mexico we're talking about, right? The Mexican embassy in Ecuador. And, you know, people are very patriotic over there. Ja, mensen, als het hier zou gaan gebeuren, ook zoiets, als Mark Rutte bijvoorbeeld naar Duitsland zou gaan om daar asiel aan te vragen, dan heeft de Nederlander zoiets van, ja, boeien. Maakt het uit. Zijn wij niet van die eikel af. Ja, maar, ja, dat is niet echt eerlijk, hè. Want Mark Rutte moet voor de rechter komen, in mijn optiek. Hij heeft zoveel criminele misdaden gedaan. Hij heeft een terreurorganisatie gesteund, 3 jaar lang, Debat waar mensen van daken af werden gegooid en zoiets in Syrië. Dus hij moet voor de rechter komen, maar ja. De voormalige vicepresident van Ecuador, die ontvlucht justitie en ja, die gaat bij een ambassade, die gaat daar vertoeven. So the Dutch audience is like, when Rutte gets, you know, granted asylum somewhere else, it's like, who cares? I would not see any Dutch people with Dutch flags and waving and Netherlands, yay, yay, except when we are in a European football match, soccer match, and we are in the finals, right? Or the World Cup, you know, we're in the finals. Then everyone is in orange and hey, Nederland, Netherlands, yay. You know, but not political situations like this. Anyway.
Mixture of helplessness, anger, frustration, and above all, seeing that despite their efforts to keep people inside safe, they did not succeed.
Ecuador forces broke into the Mexican embassy on Friday night, arresting Ecuador's former Vice President Jorge Glass, who had been granted asylum there. Glass faces corruption charges and has been taken to a maximum security prison. The embassy has been closed after the raid, which Mexico says violates international law.
As per instructions of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, we are coordinating the return of all of our diplomatic staff in Ecuador, along with their families, after the violent attack carried out by Ecuadorian police in our embassy.
Ecuador is defending the arrest, which it says was due to the risk of imminent escape.
For Ecuador, no criminal can be considered a political refugee.
The UN is calling for calm over the escalating spat, urging both Ecuador and Mexico to show moderation and solve their differences through peaceful means.
For more, I'm joined now by DW reporter Arthur Sullivan. He's been following this story for us. So Arthur, why would Ecuador take such a drastic step?
Yeah, certainly a drastic step, David, but one that has been building towards this step over the last week in particular. So from Ecuador's perspective, this man, Jorge Glass, is a fugitive from justice, someone who they feel entirely justified to go after in this way. From Mexico's perspective, it's an egregious and outrageous breach of diplomatic norms, of what they say is the norm in international relations. But where has it come from? So it's been particularly building since December last year, when Jorge Glass, who was a long-serving left-wing politician in Ecuador under the former left-wing leader there, Rafael Correa. He would have been a very well-known politician there, but he was convicted on charges relating to corruption and then other charges relating to bribery, was sent to prison. But he was released from prison in November 2022, and then since last December, he was given refuge in Mexico and was there at the embassy. But for the last few months, Ecuador has been trying to get him back, and then things really took a turn in the last week when the left-wing populist leader of Mexico, commonly known as AMLO, Obrador, he questioned, first of all, Ecuador's recent presidential election, questioned its conservative strongman leader there, suggesting that the presidential election he won last year had been perhaps in some way tainted, also accusing issues around the murder of a candidate, and these kind of issues coming up. Eventually, then the Mexican ambassador was expelled, and it led to this incident then where the embassy was raided in an attempt to get him out of there. So that's what it's been building towards.
Right, so these tensions have been building up over the last days. How serious of a violation of international law is this, raiding another country's embassy?
It's very serious. So the 1961 Vienna Convention is the framework by which diplomatic relations between international states has been established. And it's a...
Wait a minute. So you bomb the Iranian consulate, which is against the Vienna Convention, right? And this spat happens to Ecuador and Mexico. I see a connection here. You know, it's like Israel does what it wants, and so does Ecuador, right? You know, they want to see a criminal behind bars, basically. So, and the Iranian embassy in Damascus, that is a very, very bad violation of international laws. Will Israel, be punished for what they did? You know, they killed many, many Iranian people. And now Iran is pissed off, and from orange, the region goes to red, right? So it's very, very sad to see everything escalating. And there is some good news, right? There were elections in Turkey. Speciaal voor Jakub. Er zijn verkiezingen geweest in Turkije, regionale verkiezingen. En de burgemeester van Istanbul, die is dan tegen Erdogan, die is alweer burgemeester geworden. Ja. Dus, so the mayor of Istanbul, who's against Erdogan, has a second term for 5 more years. And let's see if we can find some images of that. We gaan zoeken naar wat beelden. Ja. Eventjes. Zo. Let's see if we can. Oh yeah, we found images of the local elections in Turkey, right? So here, Turkey elections, Erdogan and party suffer shock defeats. We're going to take a look at this here.
It's like the start of a boxing match. Ekrem İmamoğlu hypes up the crowd.
Istanbul!
Only he's not prepping for a fight. He's already won.
31 Mart 2024.
Today is the day when the democratic erosion in Turkey ends and democracy begins to rise again.
On the banks of the Bosphorus, it's time to reflect on local elections that have huge national consequences.
To be honest, we woke up to a good day. I believe the results will be beneficial for our country.
I was devastated and very upset that the results weren't in our favour. For 20 years there was abundance. Everything was perfect.
Turkey has woken up. My rent has increased 7-fold in 2 years. I live by myself and I have 2 kids. How do I make ends meet?
İmamoğlu represents the Republican People's Party. A vote for him is a vote against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's ruling AK party. Erdogan was re-elected in national elections just last year, but this vote was a chance for him to win back cities the AK party lost in 2019.
We will evaluate today's results open-heartedly, to the heart of our party's soul, and make sure we are self-critical.
Remarkably conciliatory and self-reflective for a man who, critics say, has chipped away at Turkey's civil rights, political and press freedoms over his 2-decade reign.
The economic hardship became more severe over the past 12 months. So there may have been hope within the electorate that after the May elections, the government would do something magic and essentially alleviate the economic hardship. The exact opposite had happened.
And İmamoğlu's campaign centred that hardship. Now there's speculation he could be in the running for Turkey's presidential 2028 election. The constitution's 2-term rule means that Erdogan can't run again, unless, of course, he changes that.
Who knows what Erdogan will do, right? George Galloway describes him as, no wait, that was Netanyahu. I wanted to say Pitbull, but that was Netanyahu. He's a snake. He's a political snake, right? You know, he provided a route for the proxies to enter Syria, you know? He stole a lot of Syrian gas and oil, you know, and the Turkish population has had enough of Erdogan. We know that there was a very big earthquake in Gaziantep, and it went all the way to Syria and Lebanon, right? And yeah, very, very sad to see people under rubble, and yeah. So we're going to show some images of the Turkey earthquake. We will never forget, right? We have a memory. And I don't know if Erdogan did the right thing, gave support to the people and stuff. So here we have the media, local media on the streets.
Telefonlara sar. Güvenli alana geçiyoruz bizler şu anda. Vatandaşları da görüyorsunuz. Deprem oluyor gene. Gel. Sakin ol. Arkadaşlar. Gazda arama kurtarma çalışmalarına doğru giderken 2 defa yüksek şiddette bir artçı sarsıntı meydana geldi ve hemen sol tarafımda gördüğünüz bina yerle bir oldu. Yine toz duman içerisinde bir...
So there we saw some images in Turkey of the earthquake. We will never forget. And we will also not forget the coup in Turkey, the coup attempt, right, in 2016.
There is now a coup in Turkey.
Tanks on the streets, jets overhead. The world watched in shock as a military coup unfolded in Turkey.
Okay, there is military in my workplace and...
Currently, everyone's on the ground because I'm fine.
Bunya! I'm here!
Come here!
Right, I think a jet just flew really, really close to us and there was a loud explosion. I'm not sure there was definitely gunfire.
Armed Fethullah terrorist organization members stormed the hotel in Marmaris where the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was staying, just a short time after he had left the area for Istanbul.
Milletçe meydanlarda, havalimanında toplanalım ve bunların o azınlık grubu tanklarıyla, toplarıyla gelsinler. Ne yapacaklarsa halka orada yapsınlar. Halkın gücünün üstünde bir güç ben tanımadım bugüne kadar.
Yet in total disregard of democracy and civilian casualties, some leaders in the West still defended the coup attempt.
But there's an ongoing coup going on in Turkey right now. This is the military. So yeah, and that is what's happening.
That those people dedicated to education and benevolence and respect for others should not be oppressed.
After this, we should note the Gulen movement is probably a very positive thing.
FETÖ killed 252 people, mostly civilians, and injured at least 2,700 who had taken to the streets to protect Turkey's democracy against the failed July the 15th, 2016 coup attempt.
Now keep in mind this is TRT World, right, which is a Turkish channel. So, you know, is this propaganda? Is this really true? No. Erdogan has been in power way too long. And when you have so much power, you get mad, right? You don't care anymore, and you're only hungry for more power. So this is what's been happening in Turkey, and there's so much more to say. Ja, we vergeten niet, mensen. We vergeten niet dat wat allemaal in Turkije is gebeurd, de aardbeving, de coup en zoiets. Het is, ja, tijd vliegt. Time flies, right? So Biden calls Netanyahu 1 hour ago, and we just saw the withdrawal of Israel, right?
All right, Alexander, let's talk about the Biden-Netanyahu phone call, which took place the other day. I've read reports which say it's been about a month since Biden has actually spoken to Netanyahu. So this was an important phone call between Biden and Netanyahu, and the basic readouts are telling us that Biden gave Netanyahu a warning to look after the civilians in Gaza, or else the U.S. might do something. No details were given. From what I understand, Biden had a list of certain things that the U.S. might do to Israel if Netanyahu doesn't agree with what Biden told him. That's what we know. What are your thoughts about this phone call between Biden and Netanyahu?
Well, the trouble is, we've heard about this so many times now since the Israelis began their operation in Gaza. We've been told about how, Biden is having, he's really lost patience with Netanyahu. He's going to turn tough on Netanyahu. He's, his patience is almost exhausted with Netanyahu. And this is just another variant of that same story, that same narrative. And there's even some confusion as to exactly what he did say, because some say that he gave a warning to Netanyahu. And then a warning is something that Netanyahu is going to just disregard, because he's had lots of warnings before, and he's always ignored those warnings, and nothing has happened. But there are other reports that saying that Biden gave Netanyahu some kind of ultimatum, that the United States insists now on an immediate ceasefire. I cannot imagine Netanyahu agreeing to an immediate ceasefire, in which case, what does Biden actually do? So once again, I think this is all about news management of the situation, the political situation within the United States. Israel has done some things that I think many people in the US are concerned about. It attacked a consular building attached to the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Well, that to me is a very shocking and worrying thing, but I think most people in the United States probably don't know much about it because it hasn't been reported. But then we had this attack on this, I always forget its name, World Kitchen group. Westerners were killed. Lots of talk about a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Biden has to manage that in some way. So we get the story that he gave this warning to Netanyahu. And I think what's probably going to happen is that we're going to get assurances that the Israelis have noted Biden's warning and they're going to act on it.
Biden is not calling the shots, right? It is Obama. And maybe even the Clintons. Who knows? They're calling the shots, right? If you look at the State Department, for example, right? When Trump was in office, Victoria Nuland was gone. She left the State Department, and Like, bye. But when Biden came into office, who was at the State Department? Victoria Nuland, right? And over here in the Netherlands, we're talking about Russian influence in elections and the social construct of the Netherlands, you know. So Russian influence. But wait a minute. Didn't Netherlands give 4.4 million euros to the Clinton Foundation? I believe so. Right? And yeah, that is, you know, involvement in foreign politics, right? So here we go. Netherlands gives millions to Clinton Foundation. So the NOS is, you know, the mainstream media, you know. Everyone watches NOS. So when it's on NOS, it's true. When I say it, it's like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? But when it's on NOS, then it's true. Yeah. So Netherlands gives millions to Clinton Foundation. The Netherlands Ministry of Economics gives support to the charity organization, the Clinton Foundation, with 4.4 million euros. But Americans ask themselves why foreign entities can do that. I wonder too, right? Because, you know, we're so-called worried about the Russians. Oh, Russia's going to attack the Netherlands. Russia's going to do this. Worry about the Russians. Don't worry about the thousands and thousands of migrants that have no home, right? Don't worry about that. No, Russia. So this is what's happening, right? They're changing the perspective of consensus, right? And, you know, we are giving support to the Clinton Foundation during an election. This was in 2016, Clinton versus Trump. You guys remember that, right? So, 2015. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Here you have it. Here you have the Wicked Witch of the West, Hillary Clinton, who tragically did nothing during the intervention in Libya, right? Christopher Stevens, ambassador in Libya, has died, and she just laughs it off.
Het is een van de grootste fondsenwervingsorganisaties ter wereld. Geleid door een paar van de machtigste mensen in de wereld. De Clinton Foundation. Opgericht door Bill Clinton na zijn presidentschap. En vorig jaar goed voor het inzamelen van $1,6 miljard voor goede doelen. Allerlei organisaties geven geld. Organisaties van Clinton, grote internationale bedrijven, lobbyorganisaties en zelfs buitenlandse regeringen, zoals in Qatar, Saoedi-Arabië en Oman. En ook de Nederlandse regering. Maar eerst, welke rol heeft Hillary Clinton in die foundation en waar komt het geld vandaan voor haar presidentscampagne? Rick.
Ja, Twan.
So, Russia is bad for doing nothing in the Netherlands. They did not interfere within our politics, right? Nothing of that. So, but we interfere in American politics. That is okay. That is okay. Giving millions to the Clinton Foundation. And now they're whitewashing it, right, with this. Yeah, you're not really allowed to, give consent to other governments during an election, but there are, certain paths you can walk and give money to, it's like, what, really? Really? Wij maken ons druk om Rusland. Rusland dit, Rusland dat. Oh, Rusland. Rusland gaat Nederland aanvallen. Moeten 17-jarige kinderen moeten we gaan opofferen in de velden van Oekraïne. Dat zit er dik in. Maar goed, Rusland is de grote dreiging. Vanwege iets wat ze niet gedaan hebben. Ze hebben niet gemoeid met de Nederlandse verkiezingen. Althans, ik heb er niks van meegekregen. Dus de Nederlander is gewoon helemaal paranoia. Althans, de regering. Die ziet een Rus om elke hoek. En die denken in James Bond termen. Dat er een van de huurmoordenaar, weet ik veel, zoiets. Het is heel triest dat onze regering zo panisch is op de Russen, terwijl we hebben duizenden mensen in Ter Apel die nu opgevangen worden in hotels waar de gemeente voor betaalt. Betalen wij dus ook voor, belastingbetaler. Dus die worden dan daar opgevangen. En zelfs daar is het dan te druk. En ja, er zijn mensen die buiten slapen. Bad en brood, weet je nog? Daar begonnen we de uitzending mee. Nou, dat kan de regering dus ons niet geven. Nee. We zijn aan ons lot overgelaten. Zij kunnen jet zetten, overal naartoe. De minister-president is onlangs in China geweest, ook nog in Vietnam en andere Oosterse landen, Cambodja en zo. Denk je dat hij met de auto gaat of met de trein? Denk je dat het milieuvriendelijk eraan toe gaat? Nee, natuurlijk niet. Hij pakt een regeringsvliegtuig. Rules for thee, but not for me. En wat doet Rutte nou precies in China? Ja, hij zit natuurlijk weer te stoken, want China is een bondgenoot van Rusland in de Rusland-Oekraïne-oorlog. Ja, maar hier kunnen we het zien, Nederlandse interventie in Amerikaanse verkiezingen en wij maken ons druk over Russen. Ja, terwijl we zelf geld geven aan een politieke campagne. Dat is toch, oh my god, man. Wat een wereld, wat een wereld. Nou ja. In een wereld vol corruptie bestaat eerlijkheid niet meer. Ja. So in a world full of corruption, honesty is gone, you know. What's a person's life worth, right? We just saw 4 Palestinians gone within a second, you know. So this whole area is turned red on the radar, right? We also have Sudan, which is also still in the war, the RSF against the SAF. You know, and that's being fueled by Libya and other countries within Africa, right? So we also have a dispute between Ethiopia and Somalia. Remember a few episodes ago, I said Ethiopia wants support access to the sea, right? Well, we're going to take a look at that. They have a dispute, and yeah, it's gone from bad to worse. So let's see if we can find some images. We have some here. Wait. There, Ethiopia threatens its Red Sea neighbors. What's next? So we have to rewind. We already showed this on another episode, but repetition is good. This is 5 months ago.
This video is brought to you by Nebula. In a state-televised documentary aired on October the 13th, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed argued that the Red Sea was the landlocked country's natural boundary, and that Ethiopia needed a port on the sea to break out of what he described as a geographic prison. Unsurprisingly, this didn't go down well with Ethiopia's Red Sea neighbours, Eritrea, Djibouti and Somalia. Not least because Abiy didn't notify them before raising the issue, but also because a few days later, Abiy ominously warned that the country's lack of port access could fuel a future conflict. Just a few days after the broadcast, Ethiopia then staged a military parade in the capital, Addis Ababa, and the head of the Air Force warned his troops to be ready for war. Later, satellite imagery detected troop movements along the Ethiopia-Eritrea border, and an Ethiopian official told The Economist, if port access is not achieved by other means, war is on the way. So in this video, we're going to have a look at Ethiopia's national preoccupation with port access, and whether Abiy, who somewhat ironically won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019, could actually start yet another war. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, the first thing to say here is that it isn't a new idea in Ethiopia. Ethiopia's political class has long been worried about the country's lack of port access, especially since Eritrea gained independence in 1993 and the Ethiopia-Eritrea War in 1998. Before 1993, Eritrea was a federalized part of Ethiopia, which meant that Ethiopia had access to the Red Sea. Ethiopia was particularly reliant on the Assab port in the southeast of Eritrea, which accounted for something like 70% of all of Ethiopia's external trade. After Eritrea declared independence in 1993, Ethiopia became landlocked, but relations were originally quite friendly, and Eritrea allowed Ethiopia to continue using its ports. However, the outbreak of war in 1998 over the disputed border region of Badme ruined relations, and Eritrea stopped allowing Ethiopia access to its ports. Ethiopia responded by signing a deal with Djibouti to use the port of Djibouti, which now handles over 90% of Ethiopia's external trade, with Ethiopia paying some $1.5 billion a year in port fees. Now, this was always a suboptimal arrangement from Ethiopia's point of view, both because, well, it costs $1.5 billion a year, and Djibouti knows that it can charge Ethiopia basically as much as it wants, but also because Ethiopia's reliance on the port of Djibouti and the main road running connecting it created a strategic vulnerability. Essentially, Ethiopia's reliance on the port of Djibouti and the A1 motorway, which runs from Djibouti through the Afar region down to Addis Ababa, means that the country is vulnerable to a blockade in the event of a conflict. If a belligerent were to cut off access to the port, or even just the A1 highway, then Ethiopia would immediately be deprived of most of its imports. This became apparent during the Tigray War, when the Ethiopian government became anxious about Tigrayan rebels reaching and blockading the A1 highway, knowing the damage it could do to Ethiopia's economy and government. Anyway, to reduce Ethiopia's reliance on Djibouti, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been trying to negotiate access to other Red Sea ports. His government is currently building a transport corridor to the Lamu port in Kenya, and restoring access to the Assab and Massawa ports was clearly a contributing factor in the peace deal he signed with Eritrea back in 2018. Unfortunately, neither of these efforts have really come to fruition. The Lamu transport corridor is still in its early phases and has been delayed multiple times, while Ethiopia's access to Eritrea's Assab and Massawa ports has been jeopardized by the recent falling out between Abiy and Eritrea's authoritarian leader, Asias Afwerki, who's been in power since Eritrea achieved independence in 1993. Now, to understand both the Ethiopia-Eritrea peace deal in 2018 and the recent falling out, you need to know a bit about Ethiopia's internal politics. Essentially, for most of Ethiopia's history, the country was run by the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, which was, unsurprisingly, dominated by Tigrayans, who hail from Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray. Tigray shares a border with Eritrea, including the disputed Badme region, and Tigrayans therefore did most of the fighting during the Ethiopia-Eritrean border war, which is why the TPLF really didn't like Afwerki's Eritrea. However, when Abiy came to power in 2018, he almost immediately signed a peace deal with Afwerki. This was both because, as a non-Tigrayan, he wasn't as fussed about the Eritrean conflict, but also because he saw a deal with Eritrea as a good way to keep down the TPLF, who really don't like Abiy. With Eritrea on Abiy's side, the TPLF in Tigray were essentially surrounded by federal forces to the south and the Eritrean army to the north. When a civil war broke out between Abiy's federal forces and the TPLF back in late 2020, the Eritrean army tacitly supported Abiy's federal forces, which is one of the reasons that Abiy was able to hold on to power. However, Abiy and Afwerki have fallen out recently, in part because Abiy signed a peace deal with the TPLF in late 2022, which Afwerki perceived as an imperialist ploy by the West to save the TPLF. But also because Eritrea, which was basically a pariah state until very recently, has fostered closer ties with countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Russia and China. This means that Eritrea is no longer diplomatically dependent on Ethiopia, which has given Afwerki more room for manoeuvre on foreign policy. Anyway, this has renewed Abiy's anxieties about Ethiopia's landlock, which is why he's started basically threatening his neighbours in an attempt to leverage port access. So what happens next? Well, while a war still feels unlikely, Abiy has been remarkably confrontational since coming to power in 2018. Not only has he been at war with the TPLF for most of his premiership, but he's also irritated both Sudan and Egypt by building and filling the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which sits on the top of the Blue Nile and could limit downstream countries' access to water. The point we're trying to make is that Abiy has been a remarkably headstrong leader, so it would be a mistake to rule conflict out, especially if he decides, as he has with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, that port access is instrumental for Ethiopia's future development. If this were to happen, it would be yet more bad news for a region that's been beset by instability. Both Ethiopia and Eritrea have been dealing with the Tigray War and its aftermath since 2020. Sudan is currently in the midst of a civil war, Kenya has seen widespread protests over the past few months, and Somalia is still, well, a mess. That's unfortunately all we have time for on YouTube today, but if you enjoyed this...
So, the situation is escalated. De situatie is geëscaleerd en als we naar Al Jazeera gaan kijken, dan kunnen we daar ook wat duidelijkheid in scheppen. Zo. Why are Somalia and Ethiopia in a deep diplomatic dispute? Ja. Het gaat dus om toegang tot de zee.
And could there be wider consequences? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. Somalia has ordered out Ethiopia's ambassador, recalled its own from Addis Ababa, and demanded that 2 Ethiopian consulates be shut down. The row between the neighbours is centred on a deal Ethiopia's done with Somaliland, a breakaway region claimed by Somalia. Part of the agreement would give landlocked Ethiopia access to the Red Sea. So far, it's only a diplomatic dispute, but the relations are worsening and causing serious concern internationally. We'll be explaining why during the programme and asking what might happen next. But to examine the background to all of this in more detail, this report from Kulsum Sharif.
Simmering tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia are now a full-blown diplomatic dispute. Somalia has expelled Ethiopia's ambassador, recalled its envoy from Addis Ababa, and ordered the closure of 2 of its consulates. That's in response to a controversial port deal between Ethiopia and the breakaway region of Somaliland. The agreement made in January has led to a war of words between the 2 sides.
What's new is that Ethiopia, which has long said that it would not be the first government to recognize Somaliland's independence, it would be the second, seems to have adjusted that view and decided to take the next step, which is to say that they would deal with Somaliland as an independent state. They have long-standing security, economic and political ties. So this is really just a step forward, albeit a dramatic one, that has irritated the government in Mogadishu.
Under a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, Somaliland has allowed its landlocked neighbour to lease part of its coastline, where Ethiopia wants to set up a naval base and a commercial port on the Red Sea. In exchange, Ethiopia offered to recognise the breakaway region as an independent nation. Somaliland ceded from Somalia more than 30 years ago. But its independence is not internationally recognized, and Mogadishu considers Somaliland part of its territory. In an interview with Al Jazeera in January, Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud accused Addis Ababa of annexing a part of what the country claims as its own.
The issue is not will Ethiopia access to the sea. They are free to access throughout Somalia.
Where?
Everywhere in Somalia, but the question is how. How do they want to access the sea? By annexing part of Somalia and changing the borders of Somalia? This is what's going on right now. It is not a commercial, it is an annexation of territory.
The latest rounds of tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia have been stirred by another Somali region. Puntland is a federal member state of Somalia and has announced a new cooperation agreement with Addis Ababa. Puntland has refused to recognize amendments to Somalia's constitution made earlier this week, and is making moves towards more autonomy by pulling out of Somalia's federal system and wants to govern itself independently.
What links the Somaliland and Puntland issues is that Ethiopia has this MOU with Somaliland, and yesterday invited a delegation from Puntland to Addis Ababa to discuss enhanced relations between Ethiopia and Puntland. And that seems to have pushed Mogadishu, or the Somali federal government, to take this step of expelling Ethiopian diplomats.
The deal is raising tensions in the Horn of Africa, a region.
Now, we know that, that the president of Somalia went to Egypt, right, and made agreements about war. You know, they want to prevent war, and Egypt stands firm with Somalia. So we're going to take a look at this here. Ja, dit is om een oorlog te voorkomen. Somalië heeft dus steun gevraagd aan Sisi, voormalige generaal.
Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has pledged support for Somalia following a deal announced on Monday between Ethiopia and Somaliland. In a phone call with Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud on Tuesday, Sisi pledged to stand by Somalia and to support its security and stability. Somalia on Tuesday condemned the deal as a violation of its sovereignty and called for international support. The agreement would allow Ethiopia access to a Red Sea port in Somaliland and also recognize Somaliland as an independent state. The breakaway region has yet to achieve widespread international recognition and is still seen by Somalia as part of its territory. The European Union on Tuesday also voiced its support of Somalia in a statement which stressed that Somali sovereignty be respected.
The EU, they're always, interfering. If you want to have a breakaway region, why not? If they want to govern themselves, then why not? Who are you to decide what borders a country has? And Somalia is a pretty weird border, You have a Horn of Africa. So here we have Somalia. Who are you to decide what the borders are for a country, right? Eritrea split off from Ethiopia, right? Why can't Somaliland do the same? If people want freedom, they will fight for it. They will fight for it. If we look at Haiti, for example, right? That is very, very sad thing to see, that there are, gangs that have power within a power vacuum, right? So people will fight for their freedom. And, I'm not approving these gangs, but this is what happens when you have a power vacuum. You get gangs, right? So we're going to take a look at what's happening in Haiti. Canada is evacuating Haiti, I see. So America has gone off Haiti, and now Canada is doing the same. There we go. Haiti is falling. Here we have Canada to end Haiti evacuations on Sunday. So, gang leader considers a ceasefire. Mr. Barbecue, who burns houses and stuff, who used to be a cop, and he wants a ceasefire. Let's take a look at this here.
He's not responsible for all the violence sweeping across Haiti's capital, but be under no doubt he's at the centre of it. His fighters are never far away. Is this now all your territory? Because it was an open road when I was last here.
Yeah.
Jimmy Chirizier, universally referred to here as Barbecue, is the head of one of the most powerful gangs in Port-au-Prince. But he's also the head of a gang consortium that's brought Haiti to its knees. He took us through the roadblocks of buses they've put in place to stop police raids on his territory. That territory now extends over one of the city's main roads, an economic highway he controls in its entirety. All the way to the bridge?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Barbecue, I'm talking directly to you. Are you making your country safe? Are you really fighting for your country, or is it self-interest? Do you want to have power, and do you want to be president? You know, because the way I see it, this is kind of like a coup, right? So, are you really fighting for your country? I don't know. I'm just sitting on the fence here, watching, and, you know, this is not good for your country, Mr. Barbecue. You know, your country needs economic stability. Don't train them with guns. Train them with books. Give them knowledge. Right? Stop fighting. You know, these people earn less than $2 a day and basically have no education. They learn how to, you know, handle a gun. That's it. That's it. That's no future for your country, Mr. Barbecue. You know, that is not a future for your country. We need smarts, not strength, right? Smarts. And I believe you do know what's going on. You know, you own the streets, but is that for your own good or for the good of the people? Because I wonder. I really wonder. Do you want a ceasefire? Really? Really? Because all these gangs rivaling up against each other, you know. You see, I know what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to prevent outside forces to enter Haiti. I understand. But is that really good for your country? It's a very difficult question, you know, because can you trust these foreigners? As Haiti has, you know, been colonized by France and has a major debt they haven't paid in 200 odd years, you know, I know your history. I know you had a war with your neighbors, the Spanish colony, right? I know. But are you doing it for your own strength, for your own power, or for the good of the country? Question yourself that.
Barbecue sees himself as a revolutionary for the people, and he rails against corrupt politicians and oligarchs. He dismisses all the efforts underway here to form a transitional council that will govern Haiti. But for the first time, he's told Sky News he would consider a ceasefire and talks if his people are represented. This is significant.
Nous croyons dans dialogue. Nous pour dialogue, nous toujours prôner pour un dialogue. Mais groupe moun sa qui là.
We believe in dialogue. Right. Does that guy believe in dialogue? Do you believe in a dialogue when you have a gun? You know? First you have to take, you know, put the guns away, right? Put the guns away. Get your best civilian clothing and you know, talk to the people in politics who are still there. Right, Mr. Barbecue? I know you're listening. Even Elon Musk is listening on RHTVLive, so I know you are. I know Alex Jones and all these others are listening. So, yeah. You see, I do not want to be famous. I just want to defeat the globalists. Yeah. Because there are global interests ruling over our planet, right? And people need to see this. People need to see the truth, the reality on the streets. So, you believe in dialogue, Mr. Barbecue? If you're watching, you can always come on RHTVLive and discuss Haitian politics. That would be very, very interesting to have you as a guest on the channel. So, there's so much to talk about. We still have the almost annexation of Guyana, right? Venezuela had a referendum about 2/3 of Guyana, and yeah, the forces are piling up at the border of Guyana, and Guyana is now protected by outside forces. So, who knows when an intervention will come. It's very interesting to watch that. So, Brazil has become a hellhole, as far as I know, right? We have the interview with Tucker Carlson and the son of Bolsonaro. We're also going to show that. Tucker Carlson. And it's become a hellhole, as the son of the former president had said on Tucker Carlson.
Whatever we say.
No, we have to rewind.
A little less than 2 years ago, we went to Brazil to cover the presidential election then in progress. The incumbent, President Jair Bolsonaro, was running against a former president, a convicted felon, who's very close to the government of China, called Lula. And as you wandered around the country, went to its biggest cities, you really got the feeling if this election goes to Lula, this place is going to, in very short order, become a police state. People are going to go to jail. Democracy is going to end. The media will no longer be able to report honestly and openly, and the Chinese government will have undue influence over Brazil. And that's a big deal, not just for Brazilians, but for the United States, because Brazil is the most significant country in the Americas after this one. It's huge. It's got enormous natural resources. It's got a well-educated population. There's a lot in Brazil. And so if it descends into darkness, that's a problem not just for Brazil, but for every country in this hemisphere. So the question is, 2.5 years later, a year and a half later, rather, what happened in Brazil? Lula won in an election that was very obviously rigged. And what happened to the country? So we thought we would get an update now with Eduardo Bolsonaro. He's the son of the former president. He's a very well-known legislator in Brazil, and he joins us on set now. Eduardo, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So looking down from here, from a vantage of thousands of miles, but at Brazil, it looks like it's no longer a free country.
Sure, not anymore. We have people get censored, not only in social media. You have people exiled living here in the United States. For example, I'll tell you the names to have no doubt about what I'm talking about. Rodrigo Constantino, Paulo Figueiredo, Alan dos Santos are 3 journalists that are living here in the United States. And as this...
Wait, but they're Brazilian journalists who cover Brazilian politics, but they're living here. Why are they here?
Because they cannot work anymore in Brazil, and also because you always have the risk of be arrested by the Supreme Court. And to be honest, not the whole Supreme Court, but one justice called Alexandre de Moraes. He had opened an investigation for more than 5 years persecuting usually conservatives. So these gentlemen, Alan dos Santos, Rodrigo Figueiredo, Paulo Figueiredo, Rodrigo Constantino, they are living here because they are shut down in Brazil. Alexandre de Moraes, this justice, he cannot even let this person has a Twitter or Facebook account in Brazil. If you are in Brazil and you want to see what they are posting, you need to turn on your VPN or be outside of Brazil.
Wait a second. Okay, so the Biden administration is a great protector of democracy and human rights around the world. They tell us that every day. And yet their close ally, the Lula government, is shutting down press freedom and forcing journalists into exile. Have they said anything about this? Has the State Department complained about any of this?
I never listened to something about that, but what we are doing, we are receiving some support from our other congressmen from the Republican Party.
Ja, mensen, hier hebben we dus de zoon van Bolsonaro die zegt dat het een afglijdende schaal is in Brazilië. Dus een hellhole begint het op te lijken. Lijkt een beetje op Venezuela eigenlijk, als je vergelijkingen maakt. Maduro die maar niet weg wil. En zo heb je dus ook de corruptie dat naar boven komt drijven tijdens de Braziliaanse verkiezingen. Ja, er zal heel veel gefraudeerd zijn, net als in Amerika. We weten dat Joe Biden dankzij fraude de macht heeft gekregen. So we know that Joe Biden has basically frauded his way into the White House, and we know that the same happened in Brazil. Lula was in prison, and I don't know much about Senegal, but the new president of Senegal was also in prison, and he is now president, right? There we go.
Well, the man set to be Senegal's next president, just weeks after having been released from prison, has addressed his country for the first time. Bassirou Diomaye Faye, whose victory in Sunday's vote sets him up to become the continent's youngest elected head of state, has vowed to tackle corruption and revamp the economy. Sam Bradpiece brings us more from Dakar.
In the years leading up to Senegal's presidential election, the country went through an unprecedented period of political unrest. More than 60 people were killed in and around protests, hundreds of political opponents were thrown in jail, and the freedom of the press was seriously impinged. In his first address to the nation since winning what looks like an absolute majority at the polls, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, the country's new president-elect, thanked his supporters for their struggle.
While I regret the pain and suffering of recent years, the lives that have been shattered and those that have been lost, I would like to acknowledge and salute our people's attachment to democracy, justice, and equality.
While his critics say that Bassirou Diomaye Faye is too young, too inexperienced to hold high office, the majority of the Senegalese electorate disagrees. He won support with a radical program which involves pulling Senegal out of the CFA franc currency, boosting local production, and renegotiating contracts with international oil and gas companies.
Let's hope that you will do the best for your country. So, I think I've shown enough, right? We're going to close off with sincerely a taxpayer. Yeah, we like this one.
I'm hurting. I
can feel my money draining. They take everything I make and you wonder why I'm complaining. I break my neck to make this money, then they just come and take it from me. My wages ain't that great in the first place, I should be paying you nothing. But they keep on coming, and they keep on taking. These motherfuckers go ham on me every time I bring them the bacon. And I wonder what it's for. Ukraine great, funding a war. Have we spent enough yet? Should I guess not? Look, here they come for some more. Fuck me, I'm sore. Sucks being poor. You had the same job for the last 6 years, wasn't struggling before. Back when Trump was in office, fuck all the junk that they called him. I never saw any of the shit that people always said he was in the comments. All of it was nonsense, I ain't even trying to ride him either. I'm just saying, you gotta admit, that shit was fine when he was the leader. It was fine when he was in charge. I never saw bills as high as they are. I never got chills just literally thinking about filling up my car. It shouldn't be that way. I don't care about Russia or Ukraine, but I do care about my own country. Is that insane? I care a lot about all the tons of money that we're paying, because it's mine, not yours, and I'm the one that feels the pain. I get taxed on my fucking ass for every dime I make. It'd be fine if they would spend my money wisely, but no way. It'd be great if they would take it and pay for important shit that benefited you and me, and not just wage wars with it. And where the fuck are all the liberals? I thought you stood against this shit. I thought the war machine was your enemy. Now you're friends with it? Now you wanna go to war? Now you wanna fight? Now you wanna pick sides in a feud where everyone is white? Now you wanna get involved and go and blow a person up? I'm just saying, I'm surprised this altercation ain't diverse enough. No one deserves this stuff. I just don't believe the tears you weep. Countries where brown people get bombed every day. I don't hear a peep, you fucking hypocrites. Thought the race thing was your shtick. I thought as long as white people were involved, you don't give a shit. Those are your words, not mine. I'm just wondering why. Why do we have endless money for them and none for Hawaii? Why is it every time Zelensky needs a loan from someone, we're the only ones that give it to him like we owe him something? We got issues of our own here at home that no one's discussing, and they keep growing cause no one in power is gonna do nothing. We're stuck. How the fuck we gonna help somebody else when we can't even reach inside our own pockets to help ourselves? We could allocate that money to our own people in different ways, to clothe and feed and bathe and let them know it'll be okay. We could definitely do that. Don't tell me it's not that simple. People overcomplicate this and make it some fucking riddle like can't just feed everyone, are you insane? You know how much that costs? Way less than we've sent to Ukraine, I know that for sure. You don't have to be a mathematician or a foreign relations expert to figure out that division. You don't have to draw a graph to see it would cost a fraction to solve half of the problems we have and stop them from happening. I'm just saying, what kind of fucking world we living in? So many billions we've given them, when's Europe chipping in? When we gonna start splitting and stirring up the dividends and begin telling other nations it's your turn to lend a hand? Listen, I don't think Ukraine deserves any of this, but I also don't think Zelensky is as great as they said he is. I don't believe the media when they blurt shit on their shows. You'd have to be naive to think this dude's as pure as driven snow. No one is, especially when you run a nation, dog. Your morals are compromised the minute that you take the job. So I don't trust Zelensky, Putin, Biden, or anyone. I don't think any of them give a fuck about all us little ones. All the people of Russia, all the people of Ukraine, most of the people of the USA probably feel the same. We don't want this shit, it's only the elites that do. They line their pockets, they profit from this, but not from me and you. Quite the contrary, in fact, we pay for it with our lives and money. They take chunks of everything we make. You soldiers die for nothing, so they can gain some more power and keep their banks fat. And all we get is table scraps. Fuck yeah, it makes me mad. Fuck yeah, I get upset. We're constantly ignored. Why the fuck I gotta pay for this? I don't want this war. How the Pentagon have $6 billion unaccounted for, but when I do my taxes, I'm afraid to be $1 short. I'm afraid I'll go to jail. I'm afraid I'll do some time if I don't pay you back the money that you wasted. That was mine. I can't keep quiet anymore. It's impossible to shut up. I'm sick and tired of being responsible for all your fuck-ups. But the question is, what we gonna do about it? There's never a plan of action. All we seem to do is shout it, and I'm guilty of it too. Always bitching and complaining, never walking, always talking, always lipping off and saying I'ma do shit, but I don't. And to be honest with you, that's the reason I don't make a lot of songs, and that's the truth. I'm sick of bumping my gums. I'm tired of flapping my jibs. Something needs to be done, and I don't know if rapping is it. We need a real solution, but we need to get together first, because unless we're all in this as a whole, it'll never work. However, what do I know? I'm just a moron with a pen, but there's power in numbers, and there's more of us than them.
The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on, continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all, at all, at all.
We love you, Samson, if that's your real name. Anyway, we have a cherry on top, right? We have another video clip to show. So it's not really the public that chooses the president. It's these scum fucks, right? Sorry for swearing. But these scumbags that are really running the show.
I had this feeling, man, because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. It's not I'm not a conspiracy nut. It's provable. Handful, very small elite run and own these corporations, which include the mainstream media. I had this feeling who's ever elected president, like Clinton was, no matter what your promises you promise on the campaign trail, blah, blah, blah, when you win, you go into this smoky room with the 12 industrialist, capitalist scumfucks who got you in there, and you're in this smoky room, and this little film screen comes down, and a big guy in a cigar, roll the film. And it's a shot of a Kennedy assassination from an angle you've never seen before. It looks suspiciously off the grassy knoll. And then the screen goes up and the lights come up and they go to the new president. Any questions? Just what my agenda is. First we bomb Baghdad. You got it.
That's how it goes, right? That is the circle of power. The shadowy people like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and, the kings and queens and whatever, royals, they're running the show. They're running the show. It's their world, and we are the plebs, according to them, right? According to me, you are someone who can think, who has feelings. You're a person. Every person is a book, and some people are hard to read, Anyway, we're going to close off. Thank you all for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing. And see you guys next time.